This is Lord Bhatia, OBE, one of the so-called People's Peers introduced to the House of Lords by Tony Blair in 2001. A merchant banker, a millionaire, a philanthropist. But just 3 years ago, he was caught up in the parliamentary expenses scandal, accused of fiddling the taxpayer out of tens of thousands of pounds by claiming for a second home he didn't live in. He was suspended from the House of Lords for 8 months and had to repay £27,000 to the public purse. BBC NEWSNIGHT has seen evidence suggesting that Lord Bhatia could once more be in trouble over abuse of his parliamentary expenses. But there's more. He also stands accused of allegedly mishandling hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of charity money to fund his own lifestyle.
It's breathtaking. We're sadly used to expenses fiddling on what most people would think was a large scale in the Lords, but to be accused by a charity of milking them for £625,000, that is breathtaking.
Could it really be that Lord Bhatia hadn't learnt his lessons after his high-profile suspension from the House? To find out, I had to get right inside the charity making the allegations, the Ethnic Minority Foundation, or EMF. The EMF brings in around £1 million a year, mostly from its property portfolio, and usually spends it on good causes in India and in the UK. Former MP John Barrett is a trustee and became involved with EMF in 2012. He soon realised that all was not well.
It looked like there was a cash crisis approaching. Well, that shouldn't have been happening because there should have been plenty of money in the bank. And it became clear that far more money had been going out of the charity than could be explained.
Copies of the original claim forms that Lord Bhatia submitted, right?
I went to the charity's office to meet the man who first raised the alarm about the state of EMF's finances.
Those miles are claimed here,
Chartered accountant Anil Banot took over as treasurer in 2012.
I asked the accountant, give me this, give me that. If I see a transfer here, transfer there, give me that. And I knew what was happening then. And I was shocked. My trust, my respect for him as a lord had sort of withered away.
Lord Bhatia had been chairman of the charity for 10 years in an unpaid role until 2009. But when the charity's chief executive left to monitor its projects in India, Lord Bhatia said he would look after things in his absence. But Lord Bhatia's idea of looking after things was not what the trustees expected or sanctioned.
He was using the charity to run his own lifestyle daily, and that was wrong. That's not right. I wouldn't claim anything at all, from charity. Even when I come here for mileage, I don't claim it. It's not necessary.
The trustees confronted Lord Bhatia in December last year. He immediately resigned. But they discovered major problems in the books. It was time to bring in a team of forensic accountants. And it was only then the trustees became aware of the scale of the alleged mismanagement. The charity has passed a draft copy of the accountant's report to NEWSNIGHT. And according to this, Lord Bhatia owes EMF more than £600,000. The thing they're most exercised about is having to foot the bill for Lord Bhatia's personal chauffeur. He was paid in excess of £40,000 a year. But last January, Lord Bhatia wrote to him enclosing cheques in an apparent £12,000 loan, yet on the same day awarded him a £12,000 pay increase, effectively making it a gift from the charity. And he did this in the same week as asking the rest of the workforce to take a voluntary pay cut. The forensic accountant's report says this unauthorised gift to the driver could amount to theft by Lord Bhatia. Next, the charity claim his contract of employment was never agreed by the board, was not even done on charity-headed notepaper, and is invalid. Its legitimacy is further challenged since the letter enclosing the contract purports to be signed by a chairman who was only appointed to that position 6 months after the letter was signed. Even if the contract is valid, the charity says the amount was excessive.
It was a great shock to me to discover that Lord Bhatia was receiving a salary of £100,000. It also was an even greater shock to me to discover that his personal driver had been put onto the payroll of the charity.
He's also said to have put a relative and long-term associate on the charity payroll when they're alleged to have been his personal assistants working solely for him. Plus, EMF wants reimbursed for the private medicine premiums for 3 family members that he charged to the charity. Add that to some other alleged inappropriate expenses, many of which were authorised by himself, contrary to the charity's policy, and the grand total comes to £625,961.
Small sums of money, and in this case it's large sums of money, can actually save lives. To get clean drinking water into a family's home in India or in Africa, to have somebody be treated against tuberculosis is worth doing, and that's why I'm still involved, and that's why I'm determined to stick with this.
The charity is now engulfed in claim and counterclaim. Lord Bhatia is suing for unfair dismissal and has launched separate proceedings against EMF to recover over £250,000 which he says he loaned to the charity. The trustees say these were not loans but injections of cash to cover up the scale of his own mismanagement. Aside from the controversy over the alleged mishandling of charity funds, Lord Bhatia could yet find himself in even more hot water. Documents seen by BBC NEWSNIGHT suggest that Lord Bhatia could once more stand accused of abusing his parliamentary expenses. During 2009 and 10, Lord Bhatia was claiming his chauffeur-driven mileage expenses from the charity. These expense forms include a running total of the car mileage, and if we take the 4th of February, for example, we can see that the total mileage travelled that day was 80. This was claimed for and paid by the charity. But the problem is, if we look at his House of Lords expenses for that very same day, he's also submitted a claim for a 30-mile journey to Westminster. But this means he's being paid twice, because we know that that day's full mileage has already been paid by the charity. And the records show that Lord Bhatia appears to do this no fewer than 138 times, resulting in payments from the taxpayer's purse of more than £1,500, which could have been claimed fraudulently.
There can be no defence for claiming the same expenses from a charity and from the taxpayer.
Lord Bhatia's alleged double claiming went on until July 2010, just a few weeks before his suspension for flipping his second home, but it did not form part of the case against him back then. It's understood these allegations are being made for the first time. To be fair to Lord Bhatia, after he returned from his House of Lords suspension in 2011 and for the whole of 2012, he didn't claim any of his parliamentary allowances. But following his acrimonious split from the charity in December last year and his wages from there drying up, as of January this year, he once more started claiming his daily allowances from the taxpayer. NEWSNIGHT wanted to interview Lord Bhatia about the allegations, but his lawyer said he was not able to because of the pending court action. His lawyer also told us that Lord Bhatia believed the charity had misled the BBC, that EMF in fact owed him a large sum of money and had benefited from the use of facilities at the House of Lords. The lawyer said the NEWSNIGHT story was an attempt to reopen and confuse the historical published position with the present dispute between Lord Bhatia and the EMF. The case has been reported by the charity to the National Fraud Agency, Action Fraud, whilst the Charities Commission told NEWSNIGHT it had an open case on EMF and was monitoring the situation.
Well, we invited Lord Bhatia onto the programme this evening to respond. Guess what? He declined.